There's a generation right now quietly doing something remarkable in American family life, and almost nobody is talking about it. Not because it's invisible, because it doesn't fit the story we keep telling about parenting. It's not helicopter. It's not free range, it's not gentle, it's not authoritarian, and that refusal to fit any category is. It turns out the most psychologically interesting thing about it, Gen X parents born roughly between 1965 and 1980 are raising kids in 2026 with instincts that look contradictory from the outside. They let their teenager fail a test without intervening, then show up to a school meeting prepared like it's a legal deposition. They tell their kid to handle friendship drama alone, then sit on the edge of the bed at midnight listening for 2 hours without checking their phone once. That's not inconsistency, that's a specific psychological architecture built by experience, not parenting books. Here's what most conversations about Gen X parents miss entirely. The defining psychological event of their childhood wasn't rebellion or MTV, it was the systematic, nationwide experience of being unsupervised during the most formative developmental window in human life. In the 1970s and 80s, American culture underwent a structural shift with no precedent. Mothers entered the workforce at scale. Divorce rates hit historic highs. The two-parent, one-income household that defined mid-century American family life quietly dissolved. By 1985, more than 5 million American children were classified as self-care children, regularly spending significant time at home alone with no adult present. Most families never reported it. The real number was almost certainly higher. These weren't bad parents. These were parents navigating an economy that rewrote the rules of family life without giving anyone a roadmap. And the children absorbing the consequences of that shift are now the ones raising the next generation. Here's what developmental neuroscience tells us about what happens when adult-level autonomy arrives before adult-level cognitive development is complete. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation and decision-making, isn't fully developed until the mid-20s. When children consistently manage stress and uncertainty without adult support, the brain doesn't just cope. It restructures. Research published in the journal Child Development shows that chronically under-supervised children develop elevated stress responses, accelerated self-reliance, and a specific emotional pattern, highly competent externally, emotionally suppressed internally. They function, but they develop insecure-avoidant attachment, a tendency to deprioritize their own emotional needs because experience taught them those needs wouldn't be reliably met. That's not a character flaw, that's a rational adaptation to a real environment. And here is the insight that explains everything about Gen X parenting, when an avoidantly attached child becomes a parent. Research shows a powerful psychological force called earned security. Adults who experienced insecure attachment in childhood consciously work to give their own children the secure base they never had. They don't repeat the pattern, they fight against it. That's what drives Gen X parenting, not a trend. Not a social media influence, a deep psychological drive to close a wound that has been open since childhood. But Gen X didn't just experience absence, they also experienced something genuinely valuable, unstructured. Unsupervised time that developmental psychologists now recognize as critical to healthy development. A 2023 American Psychological Association report documented what researchers had observed for years. Childhood anxiety and inability to tolerate discomfort have risen in near-perfect correlation with the decline of unsupervised free play since the 1980s. Gen X had vacant lots and unstructured afternoons, problems they solved themselves because no adult was available first. That built neurological flexibility, frustration tolerance, and the capacity to sit with uncertainty without panicking. So Gen X parents are holding two truths at once: the absence hurt, and it built something worth preserving. That psychological tension is driving a parenting style nobody has adequately named yet. Pew Research reported in 2022 that more than half of Americans in their 40s are simultaneously supporting an aging parent while raising children at home. Gen X is the bull's eye of that data, managing boomer parents entering serious health challenges, while raising kids through the most psychologically complex adolescence any generation has faced, in an era of social media comparison. AI disruption, climate anxiety, and collapsing trust in institutions, that is an enormous amount to hold. And they were doing all of it while carrying their own economic scars. Gen X entered adulthood in recession, hit peak earning years straight into the 2008 financial crisis, watched employer loyalty disappear, pension plans evaporate, and housing costs completely detach from wages. They cannot honestly promise their children that working hard produces the security it once produced. They know that firsthand, so instead of preparing kids for a stable world, they focus on building kids who can handle an unstable one. That's why Gen X looks different from boomers, who parented assuming the system rewards compliance, and different from millennials, whom a 2025 Lurie Children's Hospital study characterized as significantly higher in parental anxiety and helicopter behavior than any previous generation. Gen X doesn't hover because they don't believe hovering works. They've seen what happens to people who were never allowed to fail safely. But they don't disappear either, because they know exactly what it costs to grow up feeling like nobody was watching. What they were building without a name for it is what researchers are beginning to call antifragile parenting. Deliberately cultivating children who don't just survive difficulty but grow through it, who have the secure attachment that comes from reliable emotional presence and the self-efficacy that comes from being allowed to struggle. You see it in the details. The Gen X parent who doesn't call the coach about playing time but asks their kid what they were learning about handling disappointment. Who doesn't write the college essay but reads 3 drafts and says this doesn't sound like you yet. Who stays out of peer conflict until 11 p.m. when it becomes something no kid should carry alone, at every school event in America right now. There's a Gen X parent who looks slightly out of place among the hovering crowd, not because they don't care. Because they care in a way the surrounding culture doesn't have language for, not performing presence for social media. Not documenting every milestone, just there, paying attention, the way they always wanted someone to pay attention to them. For a generation that spent so much of childhood wondering if anyone was really watching. That quiet act of showing up and staying present is not a small thing, it might be the whole thing. Subscribe to Psychology Unpacked, new episodes every week. See you in the next Unpack.